everyone! In today's video we are going to make step-by-step Shock's mask from the movie The Nightmare Before Christmas. This piece is made entirely of EVA foam, so I hope it's easy, you like it, and that you can use it for your projects, especially for Halloween. Let's do it! The first thing we need are the patterns. You will have a link to download them in the description box. Feel free to resize them. Now we can take some scissors and cut. As you can see, not only I cut out the outline, but also the eyes and the nose. So here we have our main material that, as I mentioned, it's a 5mm sheet of EVA foam. I do not recommend sizing down for the base. Now we can place the silhouette on the center of the foamy, and with a pen just trace around it. Done! Let's just grab a cutter and cut again. For this, it's important to keep the nose in place. But how are we going to build it? Very easy. With funny gummy. You know, it's a very cheap material that I buy pretty much everywhere, but mostly at bazaars, which is non-toxic, super light, and it dries with like a rubbery texture, and it's like the cheap version of the official EVA foam though. I do not recommend other products in this case because they might be too heavy once they dry. With plenty of dough, we are going to create the base of the nose, so we will knead and, based on reference pictures, create its shape. You can help yourself with any objects to make it easier, but it's just a triangular shape. Notice that it's only a base, so it doesn't have to be perfect, nor smooth, or even super symmetrical. You can see that in the end mine was like full of wrinkles and bumps, and it did not affect the final piece, so don't worry. It's super important that before continuing with the project, we let this dry completely, at least overnight. So it's already the next day, the nose dried, and here we have it once separated from the base. We have to glue it down, and for this, the easier thing is to use hot silicone. We will apply a thin layer of product on the two surfaces to be glued. We will wait a few minutes until it's no longer wet or sticky to the touch. And carefully we will glue the two pieces in place. Nice! But obviously we can leave it like that. Now we have to move on to our most important step, which is to cover it. For this I'm going to use a super thin sheet of EVA foam, and I mean the ones that you can basically find everywhere. To shape the foam, we only need to apply heat, and for this I will use a super old hairdryer at maximum power. But a heat gun would be the best option for that. We will heat up the piece as much as we can, and then we will flatten the sheet against the mask to shape only the silhouette of the nose. With the volume on the foam, now we can glue it. For this entire process, I only recommend contact cement, contact glue, I don't know what you call it, but I do not recommend hot silicone, because if you do, you might not be able to give shape to the final piece. With that said, since we already know how to apply glue, the only thing left for us is to start with the nose. Well, this is going to take a lot of time, but at least it's easy. I'm going to heat up the foam again. I'm going to shape it against the side of the mask, and when it takes the silhouette and cools down, I'm going to glue it carefully. Then I will repeat the exact same process with the opposite side, and yeah, it's very easy, but it's a lot. The problem comes at the tip of the nose, where the volume is a little bit strange, and maybe we will not be able to avoid creating some wrinkles, but that's fine. My solution is just to cut through these wrinkles. First, what we're going to do is glue one of the sides, and some advice that I can give you is to remove the excess material so that it's easier for you to maneuver. And then just repeat the exact same thing on the remaining wrinkle. And little by little, with scissors, we can cut material until the foam is even. And yes, as you can see, it is a bit of like an improvisation work, so that everything remains more or less the same, but well. After gluing it, you will see that we are left with some lines. Those lines, they don't bother me too much, because once we add texture to the mask, we won't be able to see them. So now let's remove the edges of the mask. Also empty the eyes. And it is almost finished. We can shape it now. But all the glue needs to set before we can do that step, so again, let's dry it overnight. It is already the next day and we can continue. Now, let's take the paper pattern to cut out the lines of the dark circles and the lips using a cutter. We will do this so then we can place the pattern on top of the mask that we let dry. And now we can just take a pen and more or less trace these lines to draw them in place. Great! Now we can finally continue with the interesting stuff. We have to use the hairdryer again at maximum power to heat the EVA foam once more, so we are able to give the mask its final shape. We just have to push with our hands inwards to create like a slight volume on the sides and also on the jaw. Voila! Let's start with the details to bring it to life. And I'm going to improvise this step by using a rotatory tool. Let's see. What I did with the sanding wood head is to go over the lines of the mouth and the lines of the eye circles to create a bit of shape and mark its position. I don't know if you will be able to see it on camera though, but it's there. However, I do need to make an important point. Shock's mask, as you may know, it's completely smooth in the film, so everything I'm going to do next is completely optional. As you know, on this channel you have the tutorials for the barrel and the logs mask, and since I decided to give them like a wooden texture, I will do exactly the same with this character. And for this, I will use a very useful tool called pyrograph, pyrographo, I don't know how you call it in English, but after heating it, what we are going to do is create the texture of the wood all in the same direction. We can press more in some areas to leave gaps, less on the others, the number of lines can change to taste, whatever fits you. Also, we have another way to get this texture without the pyrograph. And again, it involves using the rotatory tool, this time with a stone head. I will delineate the wood grain in the same way, and a good thing is that alternating the two processes gives us like a different texture and a little more richness to the overall appearance, I think. In the end, we will end up with a piece like this, and now the next step will be to paint. But before painting, we have to prime it, and as always, you have like two cheap options. About 3 or 4 layers of white glue, or about 4 or 5 layers of vinyl latex. That is going to be my option. We are going to apply a thin layer with a brush and let it dry, another layer and let it dry, repeating this about 4 times. Now that the layers are done and it's completely dry, we'll give it a second coat of primer to even out the tone. In this case, we are going to use black spray paint, no matter the finish. Nice! Let's give it some color. I will be using acrylic paints, specifically this apple green shade, and also old thick bristle worn out brushes for painting, and you will see why. The idea is to take paint with the brush, remove all the excess on a small piece of paper, and paint dry with a dry painting technique in the opposite direction of the wood grain. We do that so that the black of the spray that we left below adds depth to the layers of the paint that we put on top. I did this about 4 times maybe, using more or less paint depending on the result I wanted to get. And next I decided to use a bluish greenish acrylic paint and a clean kitchen sponge. The idea is exactly the same, but applying the paint in small dabs in the places that we want to highlight without dragging. Optionally, you can take black paint and paint over some of the cracks, but I will leave this completely to your choice. But this is pretty much it. I hope you like this tutorial, I hope you can put it into practice, and I see you on the next video. Ciao!